Good morning, everybody. My name is John Becknell, and I'm here with Lynn Hartman. And this is a third in our series of EMS well-being and mental health and mental fitness webinars. And glad you're here. Today's topic is, are you mentally fit and why should you care? So good morning, Lynn. Good to see you.
Good morning. Good to see you. Always happy for a chance to pick your brain a little bit.
So I know you're interested in this topic of mental fitness and well-being. Where would you like to start?
Well, the words mental fitness are kind of new, I think, to responders. We talk about mental health some, but and we talk about physical fitness and how important that is, and how being healthy makes our lives better. Being physically fit helps. You can see that treadmill sitting behind me. I put some miles on that over the years, but for the last little bit now, I haven't been able to use it, and I can really tell a difference. I put on weight. I won't get near my bathroom scale anymore, and my cholesterol is up, and I know that I was better when I was more physically active and able to stay a little more fit. And I know that mental fitness must be the same. We kind of need to look after it and take care of it and pay attention to it. But it seems like, for me at least, we first responders have a pretty easy time talking about staying physically fit, but we don't spend a lot of time talking about mental fitness. We kind of avoid that, and I'm not quite sure why. Maybe it's the culture of being a first responder, but for me it seemed like when we start with this, there are two things that I wanted to ask you about, and how they relate to our mental fitness. One is just honesty, being honest with ourselves and maybe family about what we're going through and what we're feeling, and then taking responsibility for that and responsibility for ourselves. Is that a good place to start with working on this?
Well, I really appreciate that you were honest about physical fitness and seeing the treadmill behind you and knowing how hard it is for us to develop and cultivate physical fitness over the years. And I love this comparison between mental fitness and physical fitness for this simple reason. Physical fitness, we usually think about it in terms of being prepared or physically fit for a specific thing. So if you and I were, Lynn, if a couple old guys like you and I were going to run a marathon, it would likely be a bit difficult for us to get up tomorrow and run that marathon. But maybe if you and I started walking together every morning and we started maybe jogging a little bit, we probably couldn't run the marathon, but we might be able to make a good showing. We might be able to get a few miles. And all that's to say that physical fitness goes up and down, and it's often targeted for the specific challenges that we may face. Many people who try out for full-time fire jobs usually have to go through some sort of physical fitness testing to see if they can carry a hose roll or run up and down a ladder.
Yeah.
Mental fitness is the same thing in my mind. Mental fitness is our ability to meet the challenges, the mental challenges of the work. But there's another component to it. It's that ability as well to be able to really receive and experience the mental rewards. None of us get into this work to be miserable. And even though some days may be miserable and frustrating, none of us become first responders and EMTs and paramedics to be miserable. And we've done a bad job of talking to first responders about how to take care of themselves. So mental fitness is kind of a new way of talking about cultivating the thoughts, feelings, awareness, attitudes that are necessary for us to meet the challenges and really realize the rewards of the work. So that does that make sense in terms of comparing the two?
Yeah, it does. Yep.
And the interesting thing, Lynn, is that um, we can be physically healthy, but not necessarily physically fit. We can go to the
Yeah.
doctor and get a clean bill of health. EKG is good, lungs are clear, blood pressure is okay. But that doesn't mean that if we leave the doctor's office and need to walk up a steep hill that we're fit for it.
Right.
And the same thing for mental fitness. Simply, where we've gone wrong about mental fitness is we've wound up talking about mental breakdown and mental illness, when what we should really be talking about is mental fitness. Mental fitness is something more than just the absence of mental disease. In my mind, it's about having an inner strength to deal with a lot of difficult and hard things and be able to take difficult and hard things and see the good in the midst of a lot of darkness. And that takes some real inner work.
Yeah. So then we really need to take responsibility for ourselves to work on our mental fitness.
Yeah, I like to think about it. So when we teach mental fitness, and hopefully maybe later this year we'll get to do a little bit more in person in North Dakota with this. But when we teach mental fitness, on the surface it looks very simple. It seems like Life 101. But the things that we're having to take responsibility for is we're having to take responsibility for paying attention to where our attention is. In other words, paying attention to how we think about something, how we frame a situation, how we focus on the various things. You know that um, people can go to an ambulance call and and have the identical same experience, same patient, same event, and yet come away with very different perspective of that experience.
Yeah.
And that's about taking responsibility for how we are experiencing our work in EMS. And so it's about paying attention. It's about noticing our own experiences. It's about really being able to focus our attention on the things we can control, not the things we can't control, and really being able to continue to see through lots of difficulties to find the good stuff. So that in kind of a nutshell is what we're talking about.
Okay. We have so many responders, really good, dedicated people who want to be a part of their ambulance service, and they want to be a part of their family and their community, their businesses. And there's just so much of each person to go around. And if they're seeing maybe they're not giving as much to the ambulance as some other people, and they have to make some choices, then it seems like to me there's some guilt and maybe some shame sometimes that comes with making that choice, that you just can't do everything and you have to decide. Um, how do we take care of that when we work on our mental fitness? How do we learn to forgive ourselves, I guess?
I'm guessing you're talking about the fact that that so many people get pulled in different directions and they feel an obligation to pick up the extra shift or take that transfer or work on the nights and holidays and everything else, and then also wanting to spend time with their families. Is that kind of how you're framing this?
Yes, yeah, it is exactly. Yeah, we get pulled in different directions, um, and sometimes you just have to make a choice, make a decision, but it doesn't mean you're going to be guilt-free about it.
It's really interesting because I think that especially in North Dakota, where staffing is a problem for a lot of services. I know I've talked to EMTs and paramedics in North Dakota who feel um, lots of pressure to not even feel relaxed when they leave town if there isn't enough people to cover the ambulance while they're out.
Yeah,
So a big part of mental fitness, Lynn, is um, sounds very simple, but it's about paying attention to your experience. And when we talk about mental fitness, we're talking about the inner life, what goes on in our thoughts and feelings and sense of self and sense of goodness and sense of badness. All of that happens up here, happens in our heads. And I think it's really important for people to realize that anger or guilt or happiness or contentment or satisfaction, all of these are mental processes. And they happen up here. And we often think that it is the external stuff that makes us feel happy, sad, guilty, and that it is what's going on out here that really dictates what's in here. But when we work with mental fitness and we really study people and we look at happy first responders versus frustrated and grumpy and cynical first responders, what we see is a big difference about what they do with what goes on here. And sort of the beginning place to start with mental fitness is to pay attention to how you're experiencing not only your work in EMS, but how you're experiencing life. Are you finding what's going on? Am I finding more good days than bad days? Am I finding more satisfaction and contentment than I'm finding frustration and anger and sadness and other feelings that come around? I think for me, one of the most common feelings that I hear people talk about is frustration today. And that is related to many things, short staffing, bad politics, not having enough resources, um, societal ills such as having to do psych transfers in the middle of the night simply because people aren't dealing with these issues.
yeah,
But one of those is also guilt. So you talked about guilt and one of the beginning places in mental fitness is to just begin. It's sort of, we kind of look at the kind of the first level we talk about is where's your attention, and pay attention to attention. And then we talk about really using your attention to notice your experience. So the interesting thing about guilt is we usually see that as a negative emotion. None of us like to feel guilt. And the interesting thing about it, though, is because it's a negative emotion, what we try to do with guilt is quickly assuage it. So if somebody says, hey, we're short-staffed tonight, can you pick up the shift or can you do this transfer? We don't want to let the people in our service down. And the feeling that we have of wanting to let them down is guilt.
yeah,
So what we want to do is get rid of that feeling right away so it's easy to say yes. because we don't want that feeling. But if we're practicing some mental fitness, what we'll realize is we'll have a little bit more strength, mental strength, to say, I'm feeling guilty because if I don't take the shift or I don't take the transfer, someone else will have to do that, or maybe a patient will have to wait. But I also have some other things that are important. I know I haven't been home very much lately, and I know my spouse, partner, kids think that EMS is getting more of me than they are. So what happens is, with a little bit of mental fitness, rather than simply try to do something to quickly assuage the guilt, I'm able to use the guilt feeling, as a clue that there's a disconnect going on inside of me, and I need to sort that through with thinking about what I value, what's most important to me, and what decision do I need to make that doesn't just impact this moment, but also impacts what I care about in my life. And I don't want to pretend, Lynn, that this is easy, but when we start both individually and as a service practicing mental fitness, it allows us to begin to talk about these things and open up about these things, in which we wind up not having this inner conflict of now I go take the transfer, or I take the shift, so I don't feel guilt about the service, but now I'm driving home 3 hours later, and now I'm feeling guilt again, right?
Right. Yeah. Excuse me. Yeah.
So it's so important to begin to pay attention to our inner feelings. Here's the problem with first responders is that we get really good at putting the things we're feeling aside, and then and we stuff it down, and we don't really notice what we're feeling until it's kind of off the Richter scale.
Yeah. Yep.
And
I agree. Yeah.
Yeah, and we want to notice the guilt feeling early so that we can actually begin to work with it.
Okay. Yeah. Um, so as we, like you said, let's pay attention to where our attention is. So what we focus on can make a difference in how we feel. So if we, you know, I want to ask you a little bit about gratitude.
Okay.
And I know a lot of people who start out every day trying to find gratitude and just being thankful and grateful for things. You know, I get to the grocery store and back, and I tell my car thank you. I'm grateful that it got me there and back, because it's got a lot of miles on it. But um, if we do that, does that make a difference for us? And then the other side of gratitude is, how important is it for us as responders to feel like we're appreciated, to see gratitude from the service and from the people we pick up? Is there a difference there?
Well, I love the two parts to that question. So, you know, lots been said about gratitude, and all of us would like to be around someone who is thankful rather than somebody who's whining and complaining.
Yeah.
And and uh, that is also true in our relationship with ourselves, is that when we are this is why attention is so important. When our minds wander, when we're just letting our minds wander, they tend to go negative.
Yeah.
And as they go negative, they tend to find what's wrong with things and find what we might really need to be afraid of. Now, all of the news agencies, CNN, Fox News, everything else has really learned this. They've learned that humans tend to pay more attention to the negative stuff than they do the positive stuff. And first responders, when we're going out and dealing with car accidents and people who are having difficulty breathing and people who are struggling in their lives, that's kind of we're exposed to that all the time. And it's really easy for us to go negative. And part of the gratitude practice is a reset for our brain. And gratitude is a way of reframing and giving us a different way of looking at what happened. So I may have the 3 o'clock in the morning bullshit psych transfer.
Yep.
Okay. That I've got to drive 4 hours and now I'm going to be late for something else and I have to go do that. So my brain is going to tend to go and look at all the things that are wrong. Well, this is really stupid because the hospitals won't do this, and this is really bad because why are we taking a 911 truck out to do a really a non-medical psych I can go all the negative stuff, right?
Yep.
But here's what's going to happen is if I bring my attention and focus on all that negative stuff, I'm going to be miserable the whole time. But
Yeah.
I can reframe it by using a little bit of gratitude and saying, you know, I'm glad I'm working with Lynn on this shift. I'm glad Lynn's my partner on this shift. I'm glad that the truck is going running well. And I'm really glad that that blizzard missed us and we're not driving in the snow. When I start reframing things that way, the reality, still going on a psych transfer, it's still 3 o'clock in the morning, it's still going to be 4 hours, I'm still going to be late. But what happens is my mental state is not as miserable during that time. And I'm going to bring less of that crap home. In fact, when we talk to families of first responders, they are concerned when I come home from that transfer and now I'm in a crappy mood. I'm angry. And the gratitude is one of the ways in which we can work with the difficult situation and use our inner ability to find the good in the midst of something that is admittedly difficult, not fun. So that's that part of the gratitude, and that's why practicing gratitude is really important. But you also mentioned this other one. Is it important for us to feel and experience gratitude from our patients or from the public? Is that right?
Yeah.
So I'm going to say something I think people may find a little bit harsh.
Okay.
But this gets to mental fitness. If you need to hear gratitude and thanks and appreciation from your patients, families, and the public, you shouldn't be in this business. I'm going to go say that again. If you need, and I'm going to emphasize need, to hear gratitude, thanks, and appreciation from patients, families, the public, maybe the receiving hospitals, you shouldn't be in this business. And here's why I'm saying that. Is it nice to hear gratitude, thanks, and appreciation from family, patients, public? Yes.
Yeah, always.
And,
Yeah.
and when we get it, we should take it and let it in. But here's what I want to say is that part of mental fitness is being for ourselves in such a way that we've nurtured a together and mature and healthy inner life so that even if somebody does not say thank you, and even let's go further, somebody says, that was a really shitty ride. That was really, took you so long to get here, and so on. I should not need either to hear the gratitude nor be completely knocked off my keister because somebody criticizes me. We want to cultivate a kind of inner strength that helps us be able to stand tall and calm and confident regardless of what's out there. Now, when we do get the thanks, that's great. And one of the things I would encourage for mental fitness, we see mental fitness as a team sport.
Okay.
In our own organization, we should appreciate one another. We should go out of our way to express gratitude and thanksgiving to each other. And we should be able to be for ourselves in that way. But what we want is to develop the inner strength to not need it from the outside. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. Yeah. Huh, interesting. Yeah. Um, so as we start working on this and each of us take the steps, how do we start to bring this to other people, the people in our services, maybe even our families? And I like what you said, because this is about life. Mental fitness is about life. It's not just EMS or family or work. It's about our lives. And that, I think, is really important. And I've heard you say before that we need to hunt the good. And I really like that phrase. Let's hunt the good. But how do what's a good way just to start, just to say at a monthly meeting, we need to take a look at this, and how do we start getting people to do that?
So the first thing I'm going to suggest is that in an organization, let's not pretend that everything's great. These are hard times for EMTs and paramedics. And everything I mentioned before, short staffing, ugly politics, limited resources, all of this is making doing this job very difficult. So a place to start is at training meetings, at staff meetings, is getting to people together. And we've been asking a simple question. And the simple question is, are you enjoying your work in EMS as much as you hope to or as much as you used to? I'll say it again. Are you enjoying your work in EMS as much as you hope to or as you're used to? This is just an open-ended question and what we want to create. So you started this conversation, Lynn, asking about honesty. And I think the path toward more mental fitness is for us to be able to be really honest about what we're experiencing. So if the answer is no, I'm not enjoying this as much as I hope to and as I used to, we as a group together, let's begin to talk about that, because where we want to turn the conversation is we want to turn the conversation toward looking at the things we can control. And I don't know that 2024 will be any better.
Right.
I don't know that things are going to get easier. I don't know that next winter will be easier, or that the summer isn't going to be really, really hot and dry and fraught with lots of trouble. I don't know that. What I would encourage us to do is to look at our real experience and say, how can we take the stuff we can control, how we treat each other, how we develop our own inner life, how we use simple things like focusing on what we can control, hunting the good, practicing some mental hygiene, all of these things that are all part of mental fitness. How do we as a group begin to do that? So the first thing I suggest is simply make the quality of our experience. What are we experiencing? Am I enjoying the work as much as I hope to, as I used to? And then ask the question, what is it that we could control of all these thousands of things out of our control? What can we control? And that gets back to what the last thing I'll suggest is, often the intrinsic rewards, the reason we got into this business, the stuff we were hoping to realize by being a helper, by going on emergency calls, by being active in our community doing something good, those rewards are still there, but it's hard to find them.
Yeah.
So one of the things I'm doing in meetings now is I'm just asking people to say this. Since our last meeting, talk about something you found satisfying in working here at our ambulance service. Since our last meeting, talk about something that you found satisfying here at our ambulance service. I'm not glossing over the hard stuff, but I am helping people sort through because I have not found a person who could not find something that was satisfying. Maybe it was a good conversation I had with a colleague. Maybe it was one of the nursing home transfers I did, and I just found being next to this old man on his ride to the hospital was satisfying. He
Yeah.
needed cheering up. We told an old Polak joke. It was whatever it was. Find the satisfying stuff. That's so important. And if we create an atmosphere in our service that says we care about how we experience this, and damn it, whatever goes wrong and how hard it is, we're going to continue to find the satisfying stuff because we didn't get into this to be miserable.
Right. Okay. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Good place to start for all of us, I think. Yeah.
Well, I also think that's a good place for us to stop then. So we've done our 30 minutes. Anything else before we go, Lynn?
Oh, wow, that went fast. No, I just thank whoever is on and wish everybody a safe and happy Easter. And you too, John. Thank you for being a part of this, and I hope you too have a nice Easter weekend, and look forward to visiting with you again soon, I hope.
Great. It's always good to talk to you, Lynn, and
You
I'm
too.
just really happy that folks in North Dakota are taking some time to think about this. And please feel free to reach out if I can be helpful in any way. The association knows how to get hold of me, and I welcome inquiries or questions.
Okay. Thanks a lot, John.
Okay, bye everybody.
Bye.